everyone, it's Justine. Today I'm going to be showing you a couple cards using the Holiday Stitching web exclusives from Spellbinders, and this will be the Layered Stitched Diamonds die. So this is the die here. It comes with a border die to add a little bit of stitching to the edge of the border, and then it comes with this main die, which does die cut out most of the stitching. Then if you want to go ahead and add some extra stitched areas, you can do that by adding one to the center, one to the top, the bottom, the sides, and you can really build a very stitched card. Or you can take out the middle piece and die cut out a little piece of paper that will be a little diamond. Then you can go ahead and stamp on that diamond die cut any sentiment from this stamp set, and I love how it just nestles in that little die very perfectly. It's just the right size. So you can make all sorts of cards with this, even just blank. This is a very beautiful die, just as it is. Or you can go ahead and put happy birthday, happy holidays, sympathy, congratulations, hello, you did it, a note, feel better, make a wish. So you're hitting sympathy, Christmas, birthday, hello, congratulations, a note, thank you, feel better. That's at least 8 occasions. There's also I love you, so that could be kind of like a Valentine's one. Now the I love you, thanks, and for you could be turned to fit in between these tiny little flowers. So there's all sorts of things to do with this one die set and stamp set together. So I chose to kind of focus on some masculine cards because I kind of lean towards the more feminine flower, butterfly, pink and purples kind of cards because I don't know if it's just not even intentional when I'm doing it. I just love those colors. So I usually just start stitching with those colors, but here we are trying to make some masculine cards. So I went ahead and pre-stitched 2 cards, so I will complete those here, but I also went ahead and die cut out another panel. Most people have seen the stitched card videos from Spellbinders, so I won't put that in the beginning, so I will stick that right at the end. So I will first put these 2 cards together, and then I will show you how I stitch on the panel at the very end on another card. So I have this blue card here, and when I stitched, I thought that this diamond die that just came out here would be really neat to do a gradient look. So I did that with both cards. On the blue card, I did it dark to white, so dark blue, light blue, white. And with the brown one, I just did 2 different colors of brown with a tan and a darker brown. So this blue card, I have the sentiment happy birthday. So I will just go ahead and attach that to the center of the blue area. So for my liquid glue today, I'm using the Bearly Art liquid glue. It's just my favorite. I do have a link for that in the description if you're looking for liquid glue. I also use that liquid glue to adhere the whole blue panel to the card base itself. I find that with stitched cards, it's a little easier to use a wet adhesive than to use a tape runner. I think it kind of gets stuck on the string a little too much, and it doesn't actually hold on the card. So with the liquid glue, it definitely stays in place. So that's why I use that. All right, so I just put it down, and I will try to make it as very straight as I can, although it is a handmade card. So there's that. Just kind of give it a press, and I will repeat that for the next 4. So as I go about doing that, I just want to say that I love stitching on cards. I've done quite a few cards now, and they seem to be very popular. In real life, when I am showing cards or selling cards. People seem to love the look of them, and they're also very fun to make. I think that stitching is very relaxing. An activity that you can do anywhere. I have stitched on a road trip. I've stitched on the side of a beach. You can really take it anywhere. So if you're interested, maybe at the very, very end of the video, I'll show you my little stitching on the go box that I use. You might have saw that in a different video, I don't know, but I have shown it before on YouTube. But stitching is another thing that you can do really anywhere. Like I was saying, you can take it outside and stitch outside on a porch. You can stitch when you're watching a movie with your family. It really just is one of those crafting activities that you don't need to be sitting at your craft area or at a desk to do. And with that being said, I really only sit at a desk to work on stitch cards when I'm doing things like this, when I'm assembling the finished card or die cutting out the paper in the first place. But I never just sit down and stitch at this crafting desk ever. Yeah, the stitching part is much more enjoyable, kind of relaxing. So anyway, this is the finished card. Because I am kind of looking for more of a masculine look, I did opt to not plan to put any bling at all onto this card and just leave it, kind of let the stitching do the shining. So there's a look at that one. Now I'm going to move on to the brown. I did not make the extra panels here because I just wanted to show how awesome you can make a stitch card that's a little more simple, like this one, and you don't need to have a bunch of pieces, and it's really just the panel and then this stitched panel and then this little stamped area. You could even stamp right onto this dark brown panel if you wanted to. I think that a little bit of color differentiation kind of makes my eye happy, but you know, I have stitched directly on cards. I will say that if you are going to stamp on something that's stitched, let's see, I have a project that I've been working on here. Now, when I go ahead, oh, that backside is just horrendous. Anyway, when I stitch on a card where I want a stamp, I always stamp first, then I will go ahead and stitch, because you know, you could spend maybe an hour stitching something like this, and then you get to the stamp and then whoops, you sneezed and your stamp is all messed up, and now you have a finished stitched area that looks fabulous down here and your stamp is all wonky. So always stamp first. just saying. Anyway, I will be showing a bunch of stitch cards that I have finished here. I will be showing that, I think, at the end of October. I haven't really quite decided. I recently was at a craft fair and I had hours of just sitting there. It wasn't too terribly busy, so I just kept stitching and stitching and stitching, and yeah, now I need to finish up some cards. Anyway, so here is a final look at these two cards that I made, and now I will show you how I stitch with this diamond die. Here's the end part. Okay, so I have this green panel that I just die cut out. It started looking something like this, just a green piece of paper, put my die on it, ran it through my Spellbinders Platinum die cutting machine, came out with something like this. Side note, my Spellbinders Platinum die cutting machine, I have been playing with the 8-inch one. So the typical die cutting machine is 6 inches, but the 8 inches is, it just gives you so much more room to play around with, some different dies, and I'm really liking it. So maybe I'll link that in the description as well. It is a bit spendy, but I think that it's something that's going to last for a very long time. And I use a die cutting machine probably well, if I'm crafting, every time I craft, I'm using my die cutting machine, but I try to craft every day, if not every other day, but anyway. So here is where I have most of my string colors. Now this is one box of I think 7. I have a lot of embroidery thread. This is my main box where I just basically keep rainbow colors, neutrals, and then some kind of basic silvers and whites and blacks. So this is my kind of main box, but I have 7 of these. I know, it's crazy. But my stitching to go box is this box. It's just a small little container. This one is says Essentials by Art Bin. I picked this up at my local craft store for I think maybe $3.99, but you don't have to be fancy and get an art box. You could get something like the package that your deli meat comes in. I'm just picturing like those little containers at the grocery store. Anyway, it doesn't have to be fancy. It could even be a Ziploc bag. Or if you're a sewer, maybe you could sew your own. Anyway, this die cut, well, all of these die cuts are just kind of like ideas for future projects. So I always keep ideas for future things. These are all dies that I have in my collection, and I think if I just keep them on hand, then I'm going to probably make something with it. So I just kind of keep a bit of an assortment in this box for when the inspiration strikes. So, like I said before, always stamp on the die cuts before you stitch. You never know. By the way, these sentiments that I have here that are kind of like sewing related are from the Spellbinders Card Kit of the Month from September 2022, and I love those stitchy, quilty, sewing, whatever you might call them, related stamps. They're just perfect for this. Anyway, I also keep in my box this box of needles. This is from DMC. I think it's technically called the needle holder. It came with this tiny magnet, if you can see that, and then it snapped in half. It's very strong, but I just put in this big black magnet that I just happen to have in my kitchen, and it holds my needles. So I keep 5 needles, 5 needles in here, but I really only use this one. I don't know, it just seems to be my favorite. Maybe I'm weird. Anyway. And then I also have this. This is technically called the Needle Threader from DMC. And of course this is the needle threader on top, but these are also needle threaders. They are mainly used, or it's marketed as a yarn needle. But, okay, I already showed you the back of this. This just looks horrendous. Long story short, it was windy where I was stitching, and this embroidery thread was particularly very, very knotty, and it just kept knotting and knotting and knotting and knotting, and I don't know if it was the brand of this one. I have quite a bit of embroidery floss from my grandma, and I don't know if it was just like very, very old or what, but it just kept knotting. Usually my work does not look that messy. Here's an example of another one that I worked on. You can see there's an obvious difference between the two. So, but this little needle threader is just perfect, the yarn one, for hiding ends. So you can take it and I already hid the end, but you can just kind of visualize here with me. Take it, you can pull it under something else, and you can use this side and this side to kind of hide those ends. Maybe like this little tuft that's sticking out. You can kind of stick it in, kind of like that. So I keep that in my box as well. I'm going to give you a sneak peek because this is probably one of my favorites that I've been working on. It's not quite finished, but isn't this just sparkly and pretty? Anyway, I also keep a roll of washi tape in this box for any time where I am crafting and I just kind of need something to hold. So you can kind of see here, I used a piece of that here just to hold a short piece of thread. Just started the corner of this one. Haven't not gotten too far with it. Okay, now that I have just been super chatty about stitching, can you tell I like doing it? Anyway, I will start the green card. So I won't finish the card, but I just will say how I do it. So when picking thread, it really doesn't matter the color if you choose a variated thread. And I like doing variated threads sometimes because it just is kind of like an easy stitch. You just kind of stitch and it really does turn out pretty. So this is a thread from DMC. I don't write numbers on it. That's just not my personality. So I'm sorry if you're looking for the thread. I feel like it came in a multi-pack. So just try to find something like that if you're looking. Now the thread does come with 6 strands. So I always go ahead and separate it out to be 3 strands. So this was just a little scrap from a project that I worked on before. So this is already separated into 3 strands. You can kind of see 1, 2, 3 there. So now that I have 3 strands ready to go, this is quite short, but you know, I'm going to use it up because I don't like to waste. So when I thread my needle, I typically just put it in between 2 fingers, have the eye of the needle ready, and I just kind of wiggle it in. There's really it's not that complicated. Oh, this is the wrong needle. So when I thread my needle, I just kind of have it in between these 2 fingers. I suppose you could use these 2 fingers. I don't know why, but my brain automatically just does my middle finger and my thumb. I don't know. I just do it. So I have the eye of the needle here, and I just kind of wiggle, 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 and sometimes that happens. So I just kind of try again and see what happens. There, it worked. But if for some reason it's not working, I do have that needle threader. It's pretty simple to do that as well. I will show you just in case no one's ever shown you how to thread a needle before. So to thread this with a needle threader, you put this kind of diamond, matches, the little diamond shaped piece through the eye of the needle. And you kind of just let it sit there. You put the thread through the big diamond hole, kind of pull enough there. You now pull the needle off of the diamond and you wait until that little tail piece has gone through and then pull this out. And magically it is on there. So there you go. Anyway, to start to sew or stitch something like this, it really does not matter where to start because I'm putting this same thread or the same color throughout the whole thing. I will just start with the center. So I always start on the back and I go through, these are the, I don't really know what to call them, but these main holes. So this die has 8 main holes here. And I don't like to have my needle go through that first because I like to have my needle come up through the extra holes, or I don't know, main hole and the other holes, because when I am working on a project, seeing if it's going through nicely, in my brain it just makes a little more sense to have the needle come up through the other ones and go down through the main hole. So because this is a pretty small area where I'm stitching this little area here, I'm just going to hold my tail here. You could just pop a piece of washi tape on there too, like this. And it's not going anywhere. Maybe I'll just do that today. But you go up through the extra holes, down through the main holes. And every time I just kind of pull it tight to make sure and kind of adjust the tightness as I go. So you don't want to pull it so tight that it's going to rip any of the holes here, but you don't want it looking loose like that either. So you just kind of pull it tight Go down through the main, up through the next one, down through the main, up through the next one, and you just kind of keep going. And this is where the relaxing part kind of just starts. It goes pretty quickly once you kind of get the hang of it, and if you have a short thread like this, it's easy just to kind of whip your needle around. If you have a longer piece of thread, it does kind of take a while because you have to feed that thread through every hole every time, but you know, it's crafting. It's not supposed to be this instant thing. I think a lot of things in the world are a little too instant, but patience is a virtue. All right, now that I'm finished with that little area, I don't have a ton of thread here, and just kind of eyeballing it, going to the next area, I think would be, I don't think I'd have enough room. So I'm going to finish off, well, I'll finish off this area. Now you can either do that by kind of lifting up this tape and securing the thread underneath there. Just kind of sticking it down. And then trimming that here, or you can just feed your needle through the back. So I just kind of put it through those, pull it tight, and then kind of go back and forth, maybe once back. So that went one that way, one that way. And that's not going to go anywhere. When I'm stitching, it's not like this is going to be out in the open getting touched and moved around too much. So there's really no need for a knot. If you want to tie a knot with the first piece of thread, you could certainly do that as well. I'm not the fan of having too big of knots on solid pieces of stitching like this. If it was a small piece like the one that I put on to the side here, maybe a knot would be appropriate, but I don't like the card when it's totally bumpy. I think it gives it like a bumpy dimension, not in a good way. So there's that. But there's really no right or wrong way to do it because this whole piece is going to be glued onto a card, so no one will know if you use washi tape or backstitched. It doesn't really matter in the long run. It's just kind of personal preference. So if you have any stitching questions, I would love to help answer them in the comments. I do have a whole playlist on my channel about stitching cards, so if you're interested in seeing that, go ahead and check that out. And I would love to answer any questions. And I'd love to know which card you liked better. Did you like the brown or the blue? Let me know. Thank you again so much for watching, and I hope you have a great rest of your day. Bye!